Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and today I am joined by my co-host, who's a lovely man, but I'm sure he's out to get me. This is Tanner Dykstra, and we're here to talk about Hard Eyes, the new Valentine's Day themed slasher film that we're here to review. And of course, if you have seen this film, you can leave a comment letting us know what your thoughts on the movie were, or you can join our Discord to talk directly to us about Hard Eyes. And unfortunately, Tanner is deceased, so looks like I'll have to host this one by myself. Finally, a good review.
Finally. We've did it. We've stumbled upon it after all these years.
What was this? What was the formula? Remove the Tanner. Kill him. Tanner, how do you feel about Hard Eyes?
Tucker, I really enjoyed Hard Eyes. I didn't really expect too much going into it. When I initially heard about it, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Some fucking low effort, like holiday based slasher movie.
Yeah.
That I'm sure will be, pretty low quality, all things considered. But I was pleasantly surprised, largely because I didn't know a whole lot about it.
Sure.
I knew like the main actors going in. You have Mason Gooding from the Screen franchise, of course, and Olivia Holt, who is sort of a in our generation Disney live action sitcom mainstay. But honestly, I liked both of them quite a bit. There's a lot of like Scream in this film.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of the Scream franchise, there's a lot of Scream in here. I think the directorial choices also sort of seem a little James Wan to me. There's a little, maybe even a little Raimi in this thing as well that really surprised me in the creative decisions made. And it's fun. It's meta. It's got its own sort of modern twists and jokes. I had a really good time with it.
Yeah, I also liked it. I think my only problem is, and this is unfortunately a pretty big problem that holds it back from being something I love personally, is that I think its sense of humor is really annoying. I mean, there are just a lot of characters that are delivering jokes where I'm just like, long, loud nose exhale in the theater. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't still moments where I did find it funny. And luckily, both of the main actors, the main characters, I think are great. I don't have a problem with the sense of humor that they largely have. I think some of the funniest stuff is like the physical comedy from them near the beginning, and as we start getting these crazier horror like chase sequences. But I find so much of the supporting cast and their humor choices, the writing put on them for this is going to be the moment that is a joke. I find those to not work at all. It's very leaning into like making fun of like millennial, Zoomer, like internet, modern day stuff.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot
of it. Social media. I'm like, calm down. Because I do think
just a little bit.
I do think the movie is at its best comedically when it's like making fun of horror tropes. I think that those work pretty well, like it does in Scream. But it's so modern day meta in some of its humor choices that it really rubbed me the wrong way. And look, I can't say much more about that, so I'm getting my complaint out early. That is my major complaint about this movie.
Yeah.
But I think it works in a lot of other ways. But I can't really like go in depth on it. It's like I found it annoying.
Listen, there's some jokes that you're like, okay, that's leaning a little too hard into like the hey kids, we're hip too, kind of situation. I was just pulling up the writers for this, and aside from Christopher Landon, who is of course the sort of auteur behind like the Happy Death Day stuff.
Oh, I love those movies.
Yeah. It sounds. Christopher Landon also wrote for that slasher from a few years ago, Freaky.
Michael also Kennedy, like that movie a lot, actually.
Michael Kennedy has 4 writing credits, and they are Heart Eyes, Freaky, Time Cut, and It's a Wonderful Knife, which are all sort of these 2020s like slasher movie with a twist, but they're also quite meta and everything like that. So this guy's got his niche.
Yeah.
He's got his niche down pat. Anyway, Tucker, I also want to point out that the biggest pleasant surprise for me coming out of it was the directed by title card at the very end of the film, directed by Josh Ruben, who I don't know if you're familiar with him, Tucker. He's sort of a famous internet funny man. He's a part of this college humor brand. Now Dropout TV, I guess I should name it appropriately. But I was pleasantly surprised that he directed this film. I had no clue going in, obviously. I think a lot of those comedic sensibilities are there for me. And ultimately, some of those like modern day Gen Z social media jokes did not hit me exactly as they should. But honestly, I think this film has a higher joke hit rate than I truly expected. especially not just held directly to the more modern references and whatnot, but like Tucker, what do you think? I just have to ask you this. This is maybe a spoiler, but also not really. It's a very good joke that you probably shouldn't know about going in. The Hobbs and Shaw joke.
I mean, it's like a one moment. It's like a
It's
tiny, tiny joke. I thought it
it,
was fine.
that's one that really jumped out to me. It's like that's such a weird joke to put in
Yeah, yeah.
this movie. I liked it though. I was pleasantly surprised by it. So, Tucker, let's refocus here. Let's
Yes.
refocus. Let's talk about Holt and Gooding, our two main
Yes.
characters here. Did you find them compelling as a pseudo couple, even though they continually sort of reaffirm that they are not a
No,
couple at
Tanner,
all?
they are. They are. I mean, like,
Okay.
and here's the thing. This is, I think, actually the strongest part of the movie is
Hmm.
that in reality, this is a rom-com that is
In a way,
structured
yeah.
around a couple of horror sequences, but I think that the majority of the film script-wise and I guess for me like character-wise is
Hmm.
mostly based around the fact that this is an unwilling couple. You know, it's the classic thing where they don't quite
Yeah.
get along at first, but they learn to appreciate one another. They go through something that bonds them, and by the end, they love each other. There's a
Hmm.
proposal at the very end of this film, but
Yeah.
and that is where I think Heart Eyes is at its most distinct, and where I find it frustrating that I found so much of the humor to be as annoying as it did, because I think that the idea of like an actual comedy, or sorry, an actual romance movie where it's like, okay, this is a plot about two characters coming together and finding love, and like the one that's more resistant to love and the one that's more
Yeah.
like, I'm really into it.
The bleeding heart romantic.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, Mixed with a horror movie. Can't can't name another time that I've watched
Yep.
a like
Honestly.
romance horror movie. And so as I was watching, I'm like, okay, this is special. This is unique. This is not just ripping off of other things. This is actually making a genre melting that I'm sure has been done before, but not so
Hmm.
much that I'm like that I can fit it into a specific niche. Like
Yeah.
it
I
kind of
mean.
does end up feeling its own thing, and especially as a Valentine's Day horror movie,
Mhm.
it it fits that really well, and it's something I can see people taking inspiration from in future years and for future Valentine's Day seasons of like horror movie that's also a romance. Like we can really make that work.
Yeah, but I think what it comes down to is that like they pay a lot of time to setting up the
Yeah.
character and the
Mm-hmm.
romance between the charisma and the chemistry and
Yeah.
whatnot. Because it wasn't an issue for me, but I was watching this film being like, obviously you have your cold opening kill, as many
Yeah.
films of this kind will have. Sort of booted up by Scream in that way. But you're watching that for the first 20-30 minutes of this 90-minute movie, and you're like, boy, there's a lot of them like at work and then going to dinner and then
Mm-hmm.
going to her apartment, and like that's the first act, and there's not a
Yeah.
whole lot of like they don't sprinkle in the jump scares to try and get like the
Yeah.
short
No.
attention span
Mm-hmm.
people, like keep them hooked
Sure.
in. It's just purely you being invested in like this will they won't they kind of situation, this interesting chemistry that they have, of Mason Gooding, of course, being this very charming. I think he's very good in this
Yeah.
movie, playing the like he is so dogged in his pursuit of Olivia Holt, but also never in a creepy way, always in like a he's clearly interested in her, but she is like shutting herself off a little bit from any romantic interests, like because of her ex and everything like that. He's very charming in that
Yeah.
regard. And Olivia Holt, I think, is not as good as Mason Gooding. I think
Sure.
that especially when it comes to the comedic delivery, I don't think she's as
Mm.
adept as he might be. I
Sure.
think she came from the DCOM school a little bit, where you're like she
Mm-hmm.
sells it a little bit too hard, maybe.
Sure.
But I think she's equally charming and trying to be like this denying of like, no, I can't. This guy's really hot. He's really nice. He's really charming. But I've been hurt one too many times. It's essentially. And like when she's trying to hide her dildo in her apartment and everything like that, and hastily clean up her trashy apartment. Like she's charming in those moments too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that uh, it really works for me. The reason this movie is great is not only because I think uh, it sells a unique concept, but because they got two leads that knew what they were doing. And I actually don't really feel like there's too big of a gap for me in terms of
Sure.
comedic timing between the two of them, probably mostly because I was kind of annoyed by a lot of the comedy, so it's
fair,
not like
fair point.
I was leaning into the comedy. But I think that in terms of just facial expressions and being put in all sorts of different kinds of sequences, this movie spans the gamut. There are straight up comedy sequences, there are straight up horror sequences, there's straight up romance sequences, and that definitely gives both of our leads a huge amount of range to work with within these. And of course, they start to mix them together, and then there's some that bleed into other ones.
They have their moment where they're ducking down, hiding from the killer, and then that quickly becomes almost like a meet cute or relationship talk moment kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're both really excellent. I think that this will, for both of them, be a real leading potential coming out moment for seeing them in future things. Because, I mean, actually, I don't think I've ever seen Olivia Holt in anything. I've heard her name, but I can't figure out where. I certainly haven't seen a movie with her
I just realized she was in another one of these like 2020 streaming slasher movies with a twist. She was in Totally Killer from a couple of years ago. But otherwise, she's mostly just like
with Kiernan Shipka, who's Gryla in Red One.
Oh my gosh. Otherwise she is mostly like in like Disney stuff. It seems it looks like she took like a break from acting for a while. She didn't have a whole lot of credits, but I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, and then for Mason Gooding, I think he's probably the one that's really going to benefit off of this because I've
going
seen him
into
in
Scream
a lot
7
of supporting roles, but he certainly could lead a movie. He's got the screen presence, he's got the comedic timing, he's got the suave to do anything that he needs to. And so I think that even if this isn't one of my favorite movies, I think they both give really excellent performances that I'm excited to see this be the inspiration for other people to cast them. Oh, they were good in that. Let's try to see what we can get out of them in the future. So I guess I wasn't pleasantly surprised because I was like, yeah, no, this was good.
I think Mason Gooding is better in this than he is in the two Scream movies, frankly.
I would certainly agree with that. Yeah, because he's given a lot more to work with here.
For sure. All right, Tucker, enough of the lovey-dovey rom-com bullshit. Let's talk about the horror. Let's talk about the kills. The grisly, gutsy, bloody kills. Yeah. Pretty good, I thought, honestly, for slasher stuff. There's nothing like super over the top, blow your mind interesting because I think the movie is sort of like splitting its attentions pretty well between all of the different avenues. But like the Hard Eyes Killer has like a solid costume. He has like his throwing knives and his his like darts and everything like that. I think are pretty neat. The mask, the costume is pretty cool with his heart eyes on the Hard Eyes mask become like night vision at one point. Like it's kind of high tech in this regard, and I think it's a good enough design, frankly.
Yeah, it is definitely a good enough design. I don't think that it is. Frankly, the only thing that's like really strong about it is the heart eyes,
mask,
and the mask, which otherwise I think is okay, but like it doesn't really feel like it. I don't know. Like it's like a it's very militaristic. Like it's
he's got like leather, a military jacket. Yeah.
I don't know. It's odd, but I do think that it works, and it'll be interesting to see if they're able to make this into an antagonist if there's become a franchise that does gain a little bit more interesting and unique traits. But I do think this is a very solid foundation, just because it has a unique concept of going after couples, and the visual design is there, and I like the fact that he's like a tiny crossbow. That is not
the weapon crossbow,
because it's like a Cupid thing. He's got a tiny little crossbow. He's not an archer.
It's good.
He's got a tiny military crossbow that he goes boom, and it just like it like absolutely destroys people.
The collapsible arrows that go in them are used as weapons a couple of times unto themselves instead of being launched out of the crossbow. I think there's a good variety of like blade weapons that he uses here, and
I also think that what makes the Hard Eyes Killer work as good as a slasher villain can is that this fucking killer is just brutal. They are running, they are stabbing. There's no dumb, slow Jason Leatherface. There's no silly Freddy Krueger. This is just a guy that wants you fucking dead, and he will charge at you and like go a little bit too like hard sometimes. But so it's very clear that's like just a person that's like very dogged in their attempt to murder
Yeah,
you.
it's a ghost face in that regard.
Yeah,
He of course has a more like outsized strength than
definitely.
like a ghost face does, but like in that regard, in that it's not supposed to be supernatural, it
Hmm.
is very ghost face.
Yeah,
Um, and so Tucker, should we talk about the twist then,
sure.
since we invoke ghost face? So spoilers for the killer reveal of Heart Eyes. Again, very Scream. There's more than one killer. There are in fact three killers.
Yeah, there are, but I think this is
Yeah.
one of the weaker part of the movie.
Okay. Okay.
Because only one of the three killers is interesting that they're the killer, and the other
Jordana
two,
Brewster, you're
yeah,
talking about?
Jordana
Yeah.
Brewster, she's Shaw, I believe,
Yeah.
is one of the killers,
Yeah.
and then really that's the interesting part, and then
Yeah.
the other two are a guy that we didn't even know about. It doesn't really matter, and he's dead. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine, and that leads there to be like two third acts with it, which I think is fine for the
Yeah.
pacing.
The,
But then
the reveal
the
of
third
they take
one
off. Yeah.
is
Go ahead.
the guy that she saw
The
one
IT
time
guy.
earlier.
Listen,
And so it's
that
like
is the-
I don't know. You're really like trying a little bit too
I
hard to
think
have it
that
be
reveal
like
though is so clearly meant to be a comedic moment of
Sure.
because they take off the mask the first time and it is not supposed to be funny when they take off the mask
you're
necessarily.
like,
It's supposed
oh.
to be like for the audience it's like, well, I've seen slasher movies before. There's clearly a further twist coming.
Sure.
The killer is always somebody they know. It's never a random
Yeah,
guy.
yes, sure.
And then then you get the actual reveal at the church and everything. He takes off the mask and then you get that moment of, you remember me?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm Devin, the IT guy. You
Yeah.
saw me earlier. Almost talking to Olivia Holt and the audience at the same time. And then of course you get the actual like Scream type reveal.
Yeah,
It's like,
the
oh, it
meaningful
was someone.
reveal.
It was someone who was in the movie the whole time. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yeah. Though, to be, I guess, kind of uncharitable to this movie, there
Okay.
is a very limited pool of people that you could
That's true.
possibly
It's a
draw
small
from
cast.
to be the killer. The man, really the only other options would be like her boss or her friend, because even the
Yep.
other police guy,
Her ex, maybe.
yeah, maybe, but like
Barely a character.
But to that point, Jordana Brewster is the only one that gets any meaningful dialogue or any meaningful
True.
sequences between the two of them. I mean,
True.
her friend is there, but frankly, she's the one that I found the most annoying. I think she's really fucking obnoxious.
Yeah, she yes. Well, she's acting in a very, I mean, I don't want to be rude or, sort of group things together, but like in a very TikTok virally viral speak sportive manner.
Yeah, and that really,
but like I kind of found her charming at the same time when she says like, my basement flooded. I was like, oh, that's kind of, I mean, it's something. You're like, whoa, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason why I was not super compelled by the Jordana Brewster twist of his is because there wasn't a lot of red herrings to pick from.
That's fair. Yeah.
Usually we're doing an ensemble cast that anyone could be, but there's of course the idea in our minds, because we've seen a lot of these movies, that it's probably someone that we knew, but there's not really setups for potential, and so when it happens, I'm like, yeah, I guess that really was kind of the only option.
There is always the other possibility of somehow Mason Gooding is involved in it. There could be multiple killers, but he could always be involved in some fashion.
True.
That was always in the back of my mind. But yeah, once Jordana Brewster sort of shows up and she's the one that makes it out of the police precinct alive, you're like, okay, she's coming. Come on now. Yeah.
Though I will also say that
the
movie does try to Saw style retroactively explain, in the sequences, this is how it would make sense that there would be multiple killers. I don't think it does that particularly well, because it's never you're never in a moment where oh, that doesn't make sense. That how could he have gotten downstairs so quickly, or how could he have done this so quickly? It's no, yeah, it feels like it's one guy the entire time, and then the only other thing that indicates that Jordana Brewster is a part of it is that she wasn't killed in the police thing, and so it's so she's a part of it, but I don't think she was ever the killer chasing them.
There's a moment where Devin, is it Devin? Is that the guy's name? I feel like it is. Anyway, the IT guy.
You've been watching too much Severance, Tanner.
that might be true. Where the IT guy breaks down he does a little instance of like, I was in your closet, and then I was the one that chased you, and
He's
she was
not
in
on
the
the cast
closet,
list,
and,
by the way.
oh, okay. And like Bob or whatever the hell the other guys was like, he was the one that shot the driver, and like so
Yeah.
they do a little bit of breaking it down like that of like there was always three of us, but you only saw one of us at a time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I like the reveal. I like this. I like their third act sort of knockdown, drag out. Everyone's getting
Mm,
slashed and stabbed and shot and
sure.
everything like that. I thought that was a good way to end off the film, especially because that setting, the lighting, and everything coming through. That was what really signaled to me like along with some other kills throughout the earlier in the film
Sure.
that like we're paying homage to some classic horror moments, even some more modern horror stuff that maybe will be inducted into the Horror Hall of Fame in years
Hmm.
to come. The light in there, the design of Jordana Brewster's costume and everything was really giving like James Wan Malignant to me.
Hmm.
There's some camera movements and some camera placements and everything like that in that final sequence that reminded me of some Raimi, some like Evil Dead camera stuff. And one thing I do want to mention, the I like the scene a lot actually when they're at the drive-in theater watching His Girl Friday. By the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
shout
Yeah.
out, great
Shout out.
film. Um, and the couple's having sex in the back of the van. Funny moment.
Yeah.
I like that moment quite a bit. And when that couple gets killed with like the tire iron or
Mm.
whatever, and we do the shot through the woman's
Yeah.
like the hole in her
Oh,
head
sure.
through to the Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt up front, I was like, that's a Texas Chainsaw
Oh,
Massacre
sure.
'03 reference,
Yeah.
which Jordana Brewster was in.
Oh, look at that. Full circle. Full circle.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and I certainly liked a couple of those moments. I think that the reason why I struggle to like feel this is a movie like particularly compellingly directed to me is because I think that those moments are pretty few and far between, and
That's
otherwise
fair.
it looks pretty stock standard.
It's standard. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily an insult, but I do think that for me, the creative direction of the film is in the merging of these genres, where I do think it
Absolutely.
succeeds. And so my mind, and I know this isn't how most people end up like reviewing or thinking about a movie, is I'm like, which elements of it worked and didn't work for me, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and you can cut this movie into some pretty solid silos of the horror elements of the movie, the comedy elements of the movie, and the romance elements of the movie. And romance, I think it's surprisingly strong. The comedy,
Yeah.
I think it's surprisingly weak for me. And then
Okay.
the horror, I'm like, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is a fine, solid horror movie. And so it definitely balances out. But at the end of the day, I still like it. I think that it was a surprise to me that it was as unique as it was, that both of the leads were as good as they are, because we get so many horror movies, so many slasher movies where the main lead
yeah.
is no one you care about.
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, I liked quite a bit of this stuff in here. I think everything was operating on a pretty even keel for me. Comedy maybe like a little bit behind because we're doing so much modern stuff, and it's hard to do that. Listen,
Yeah.
I understand as a comedy writer, you like want to do
Of course,
topical
of
stuff,
course. Yeah.
and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to make that sing true for everyone watching your movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't talk. Is there anything else we need to hit with
I don't think
Hard
so.
Eyes?
Because it
Okay.
also is just it's by the numbers,
Yeah,
but in
you're in
a
and
solid
out.
way.
Oh wait,
Oh
I
right.
like the phone call that Olivia Holt has with her friend where all the dialogue is names of rom-coms. I thought that was pretty good and
Oh,
funny.
I did not. That Tanner. That's another
Listen,
moment where I long slow exhaled in the theater. I'm
yeah,
like,
I think it's
God
just a matter
damn
of
it.
in a worse movie I would not have liked
Sure,
it.
no, that's
In
totally fair.
But I think the movie had earned goodwill with
Yeah,
with me
if that
up
was
till
in
that
Texas
point.
Chainsaw, what 22 or whatever.
Oh yeah, God. Oh God, don't. Oh Jesus. But
But
it's
that
just a
movie
matter
is very much like that. The one I'm referencing.
doing a
It could have
similar,
done that
trying to do
similar
a similar
thing,
thing.
and
Yeah.
you would have been doing this at the TV, like
I would have. It's just a matter of like
at the
building
TV, not the
goodwill.
theater, because it wasn't a theatrical release film.
It's true. It's just a matter of building goodwill
yeah, of
with your
course.
leads, with the chemistry between them, with sort of getting the audience on board a little bit with what the vibe of the movie is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Hard Eyes it can be a little bit alienating in that regard, but I think it does its best.
Yeah, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what this creative team does next. If it is another
Yeah.
horror subversion movie, if there is a sequel to this, I'd certainly be willing to see them grow, because I think this is a solid foundation. Even if I didn't
think
love
so
it, I
too.
might learn to appreciate it a little bit more in the future. But it is definitely a good movie, and I also like that the holiday slasher is back in a way.
Yeah, in a big way.
When we came off of Violent Night into Thanksgiving into Hard Eyes, I'm like, hey, you know, what's old is new again, because people will look at like the 80s ones and either they're like, ooh, this was so cheesy and dumb that it's actually kind of awesome, or they'll be like, that's a giant waste of time and like a cash grab, and we're back. We're back, baby.
Now we need to hit New Leprechaun. We need to hit April Fool's Day. We need to hit all these babies. All right, Tucker, 7.1 out of 10.
I will go 6.4 out of 10. Good movie from both of us. Good scores from both of us.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.